For those that are joining us, we just want to wish all of you happy Women's History Month. This is an awesome time to celebrate the achievements and advancement of women. But Barry and I thought it was real important for us to talk about women who are unsung and unheard, because we all have value. We all have stories that can inspire, uplift, and encourage people. And our focus was on the women who are homeless. We have over 500,000 homeless population that continues to grow. It's been compounded by the devastating effects, economic effects of the pandemic. And we're even watching homelessness unfold before our eyes when we look across the way to our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. So it's something that we need to pause and talk about. And Barry, I noticed that you have a new gym behind you. So what is that?
Well, one of the fun things about being a gemological storyteller is I get a chance to kind of bring different gemstones throughout history and apply to appropriate meetings or appropriate workshops and meetings. So this is the Hope Diamond. And I just thought the whole concept of hope and what we're doing with unsung and unheard women, this would be an apropos time to use it. It's blue. It's it's very rare. It's extremely unique. Like a lot of many of the women, or really all the women that are out there, even though they're going through what they're going through, they are each unique and beautiful in who they are. So I just thought it was the perfect time to show off the Hope Diamond. Obviously, I don't own it; it's on loan. I don't know to who. I loaned it out to someone. I don't know who it is. So I just have the picture to remind myself of it. So,
well, perfect. I love that you brought that in. So it definitely aligns. And we were sharing your story about having experienced homelessness, and we equated that to individuals who are just going through that dark time, whatever it may be, and trying to find your way out and back into the light of who you are, the light of your beauty, the light of your value and your worth. And I was thinking about my cousin Barry, who she's the eldest on my father's side. So right now she is 70. Wow. And when I was growing up, she was one of those women who I just aspired to be like. I mean, she just had it all together. This is in the 80s. She was already earning $250,000 as a realtor in one of the most expensive cities to live in the U.S., San Francisco, and just educated and traveled the world, just rocking and rolling, just like you. I mean, life was beautiful. She was living the dream. And then life happened. And when I found out from my parents that she was homeless, I thought, you mean she sold her home? Right? I'm trying to, and they said, no, she's homeless. You mean she's relocating? No, she's living on the street. I'm like, there's no way. It's literally, how could that be? And, to not get into her backstory, but she went from owning several homes, losing her homes, taking the money that she had to try to keep a roof over her head. So where did she live? Again, you're in that lifestyle and you're trying to keep the image up. Right. So she lived in hotels.
Yeah.
Well, pretty soon you exhausted and she's on the street. And when I talked to her, it was it was shocking to hear all that she went through. And you shared with what you saw, you know, with women going through, you being a man and your size, that in itself can be intimidating to most people. But for this woman, I mean, she's smaller than me. I'm 5'3", so she's smaller than I am.
Wow.
And she was beaten. I don't know how many times she was raped and had her front teeth knocked out. And it was just a beautiful woman. In fact, I'm going to show some photos just of the life of the face of women who were unsung. And my dad had called me and he said, I've got to go. My parents are in Arizona. He's like, I've got to go to Bisbee because I understand she's at the bus station. I'm like, Bisbee at the bus station? And he didn't even recognize her when he went to pick her up. Again, this is a woman who was beautiful. The last time we saw her, she had it all together. He sees her. She's emaciated. Like I said, you could tell she had been beaten. And just when your life on the street, you know, starts to mess with you mentally. But the beauty of it is she was only going to be in Arizona, she said, for just like 3 months. She goes, I'm just going to get my life together and move on. Well, it's now going on 4 years that she's stayed there in Arizona, and watching her blossom again. Right now, she hasn't bought a home, but she's now, you know, in a nice apartment, and it's furnished and the furniture that she bought, right? And I remember when I was there, Christmas, we went out to dinner and I just started talking because I hadn't really probed about her experience. And, you know, Barry, even after that conversation, I looked at her, I said, you're still my shero. Because all the strength that I saw when I was growing up in her is what helped her to survive on the streets. So I want to just turn that over to you about just how we survive when crap happens.
Wow. And your story, your cousin, just brings back so many memories. I think you can really only, when you're in it, you're so busy surviving, you're just thinking literally minute by minute, sometimes second by second. And we were talking and you made me think about someone in my life, not just a guy, but a woman who in my life who helped me. And it was so funny. The woman, her name was Antiquity from Shakespeare, Antigon, which was which was, you remember the story. Actually, it was my first book report in school. Antiquity was a woman who her brother was killed in war, and it was kind of, he betrayed the army, so they wanted to bury him without all the fanfare, kind of like bury him in an unmarked grave and that kind of thing. And she fought for him. And she was part African, but I think she had this Southern thing. And her father was into Shakespeare, so he named her Antiquity. And it was so funny. She was just this little thing. She was just, and here I am, this big, you know, Marine and stuff. And how we met was in the shelter, and she could tell that, you know, I'm a nerd. You know, it's like I'm like, what do you mean? What's going on? And she just looked at me and she said, "You're not gonna make it." And I looked at her like, what? And she says, "Baby, you're not gonna make it at all." And I'm like, and it was like she was challenging me, and I'm looking at this. I know I felt bad, but I'm not gonna let this little thing just tell me I'm not gonna make it. Do you know who I am? So here we're both in this shelter, and here's this woman kind of like manning up on me. And to make a long story short, she helped me so much. She did have a problem with drugs, because she had been raped and a lot of things, molested as a child, things of this. So drugs was her problem. But she had gone to school. I think she had a couple of degrees, and life just happened. And she was so sweet to me. People thought we were together because she was my wingman. She was my wing person. It was like she would guide me through. Can you imagine being guided through the whole process of homelessness? And it was really through her that I got to understand the hierarchy. I got to understand the different shelters. So she was like a big sister. She was like a mom to me. We were co-survivors in this experience. So as I was thinking since the last time we talked, it was wonderful thinking back just how a woman, and a woman has been in my life my whole life. My mom was a woman and everything else, but this woman was one of those women, one of those unsung heroes. I don't know where she is now. We parted way. I think she had to go through. She went some kind of rehab or something. So God hope she's okay and alive and everything. But I'd just like to say out to her, if she's listening, if she's one of these people, thank you so much for helping save my life. You were the sister, you were the mom, you were the friend, you were the companion that I needed, and I love you for that always. We were never anything. It was just two people coming together, and she saw the humanity in me. She cared about me as if her last name was Mixon, and it just brought back memories of just how much she meant to me, how much she still means to me.
And that's a beautiful story. And I just encourage those who are listening to get out of your own way. Really assess if you have some biases that may be preventing you from seeing and hearing people who are placed in front of you. Like we said, these are women unsung and unheard. And I remember you said the worst thing was feeling invisible.
Yeah. And it was bad for me as a man, but now as I've gotten older, again, this was 29 years ago. So I have evolved as a man, and I know how oftentimes women feel unheard. Women who have jobs and everything else, now women just living in a society often feel unsung, unheard in their jobs and their family. So imagine how that feels on an exponential level, to be homeless, to be stripped of everything, your humanity, and then still trying to hold on to what memories you have. And again, I want your audience to look at me, and I got the Hope Diamond behind me and everything else, and just understand that I am the same person that if you walk down Michigan Avenue, March of, now it's 1993, I would have been disheveled. I would have been hair, teeth, just a mess. I didn't get a brain operation. I didn't get a soul operation. This was still Barry B. Mixon, but life happened, and that's where I was. So next time you see a homeless person, understand that could have been me. That could be Antiquity. That could be the women that you've met during your child when you was out there, LaWanna, seeing what homelessness is like. And maybe that will begin the pattern of people looking deeper than just where that person is at that moment. Because that's a snapshot. That's just like this Hope Diamond. It took at least 1 billion years to make this. So if you looked at this Hope Diamond in just 1 month, that's a small portion of the whole lifespan. So there you go. Just think a little deeper next time you see a homeless person, whether you give them money or not. Again, look them in the eye. Remind them that they are human, because once upon a time they had a home. As your cousin, once upon you had a home. Once upon they had a job. Once upon a time they had people who loved them.
Exactly. I was thinking before we came on, her name is Melva, and Melva, she introduced me to reggae. And I still have the album that she gave me back then when life was great. And it's from Third World. And one of my favorite songs on it, and it literally didn't hit me until right before the show. And the song is called I Love You with a Sense of Purpose. And I just want to read a couple of these lyrics. It says, people call you so much dirty names. They're using you to play their kinky games. And when they're done, they turn their backs on you, saying you're washed up, sad and blue. But now you finally reach the top. That's when you think the dogging stops. They can't find one thing to say. They've got to eat their words day by day. And then it goes on with love you with a sense of purpose, love you with a sense of purpose. And again, for those that are listening, if you're feeling that you're just beat down, and you need some words of encouragement, start, if there's no one around you encouraging you, start speaking into yourself. Like you said, Barry, you found the book As a Man Thinketh. Whatever you need to start feeding your spirit and reviving your soul, do that. And if you can't do that, then pray that the right people, the right resources will come around, like a Barry B. Mixon, to lift you up, to say, I get it. I see you. I see you. But I'm also a testament and a testimony that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I do that often when I see people who have reached homelessness in their life. That's a part of their journey. And they'll come to me, and I do the same thing I'm telling you guys. I look them in the eye and tell them, I've been there. And they'll look at me like, no, you haven't. And then I'll start explaining. It's almost like being in the Marine Corps. When you're in the Marine Corps, you know other people in the Marine Corps because there's things that we know that other people who are not in the Marine Corps. So then they'll say, well, were you here? And then I'll start telling them different shelters. And I'll tell them, they were like, you really were homeless. And I'm like, yeah, did you think I was fooling? And then it's like, it creates that bond that I understand where they are. So therefore the listening. So even though you haven't been through homelessness, you can imagine it. You can imagine that day that you were hungry, when you were really, really hungry. Now you had food to eat when you got home, but you were starving. Now extrapolate that feeling for days, weeks, months. Then you understand what homelessness feels like. When you can't wait to get home and there's traffic and everything else. You just can't wait to get home and get inside your bed and you close that door. Now imagine when you got home, there is no home. That's what homelessness feels like. You know, when you turn on that light and the light turns on, you turn it off, you turn it back on, and just imagine not having that light. Not even having access to a light. That's homelessness. So people think homelessness is just this existential experience, like, oh, it's so far away. No, it's not. Most people, as we see in 2022, most people are one paycheck. Let's think about those people. Where were they? In Tennessee? The tornado was coming, and the job told them, you got to stay. And they stayed, even though they knew they was risking their lives, because if they didn't stay, they couldn't afford to lose the money that they would lose to leave the job or to be fired. So they are literally, it was death or homelessness. And so many of us Americans are going through this. And then, as LaWanna was saying, think about the millions of people, tens of thousands in Ukraine. They were fine. 2 weeks ago, they were fine. Right. They were going to school. They had dreams and hopes. And now there's a war.
There's a war. They're living in a subway station and tunnels. Yeah. With them and seeing these images, Barry, of these mothers, because the men had to stay. So they're trying to, they're exiled, or not exiled, but they've evacuated. But they have 2, 3, 4 children, but nowhere to go.
Just take a second to think about the confusion of that. Not only just you're an adult and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Think about that child, that child's whole identity of the world is based on your facial expressions, the way you feel, the way you're acting. Mom, if dad is not here, mom is here. Now, mom, why are we in a train station? Mom, I'm hungry. Because if you've been a parent or you've been with kids, kids like patterns. They like certain things that happen at a certain time. And they're 5, they're 6. That's all they know. And now here's this thing called war. Here's this thing called evacuation. Here's this thing called walking miles and miles and miles to hope to get past the border. So homelessness, we talk about unsung and unheard. Just don't think about just your local community or extrapolate. Go to your city, your state, your region,
Yes.
your country, the world, and then that will help you begin to um, uh, uh, have some empathy to people
Yeah.
who are homeless.
You know, when you were talking, it made me think about, well, we saw another great devastation here in this country with Katrina,
Mm.
right? How many tens of thousands of
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
were homeless?
Yes.
And then eventually, when people are like, yeah, but FEMA came in. Well, my aunt and uncle were one of those who had their
Mm-hmm.
houses destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Let them come and tell you how long it took for that FEMA trailer to get there.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they had children who they could go to, but how
Mm-hmm.
many didn't?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
It's the
sometimes
most loneliest feeling. You feel like you're on another planet. I mean, I'm from New York City, Harlem, New York, born and raised, and here I was in Chicago, and even though I recognized the buildings and Soldier Field and all these different, it didn't mean anything to me. I might as well have been on the moon. I mean, it was just that foreign to me because it was like everyone was moving but me. Everyone spoke a language that I didn't understand anymore. I no longer had value. I was no longer a human being. I was just, sometimes I thought the street pole had more value than me. That they
you
would,
just said
they would see the street pole before they saw me.
this happened to me a little over a year ago. I was going to the post office, and there was a homeless lady who was sitting there. I walked in. I saw her, I recognized it, and I said, I'm going to give her something when I come back out. I came back out, and I reached in my purse to hand her money. And she said, why do you think I want your money?
Mm-hmm.
And I paused. I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, you're homeless?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, would you mind talking to me?
Mm. Mm.
Very,
I'm sorry.
was just like, oh my God. And I sat down on the ground with her and just talked for about 15 minutes. And, I asked her, could I get her anything? Did she need any food or anything like that? She said, thank you. I just wanted someone to talk to me.
Yeah.
And, I remember driving away, and I think that was the first time, because I shared, with my experience when I was doing street ministry, but that was the first time it hit me that we take conversation and communication with people for granted, right? Like you said, you're invisible. People see you, or they may see you and they walk on the other side of the street, right? They don't want to get close to you, or you share the story about being in the bus and people, moving to the front end of the bus because they didn't want to be around you.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember my dad said something a long time ago. He said, the loneliest feeling in the world is when you are around people, a crowd of people, and no one sees you.
No one sees you. And you no longer have an anchor. We live in a society, we live in a world where your anchors are, what you're wearing, what you look like, is your hair done, did you have your makeup on, which is another thing for women, which I have to admit, LaWanna made me think bigger than that. What about the women who don't look like Rihanna or look like J-Lo or whatever else? So imagine you have all these rules and regulations that say you are someone, you dress a certain way, you have whatever. Right. And now all those things, even down to the basic anchors that make it seem to, or show the world that you are someone, like you have a place to live, like you can go to the bathroom. Toilet paper becomes a whole different thing when you don't have it. It's sometimes, I've accomplished a lot of things since then. And sometimes people say to me, if I'm talking about it, they'll say, oh, you're arrogant. And I always think to myself, I say, you know what? Let me tell you something, what happens to you when you're homeless. There is never, ever a day. There's never a sandwich that I eat, a bowl of soup, water, going to the bathroom that I don't imagine and remember what it was like when I couldn't go. When I didn't have a place. Right now, your audience, think about the last time you really had to go to the bathroom. And now say to yourself, what do you do when there is no toilet? What do you do when there is no place to go? Now imagine if you're a woman, you know, guys can just go, you know, we find a tree. Women, you don't have the plumbing for that. You don't have the mentality for that. Again, I spent 14 years in the Marine Corps, so it was slightly easier for me. But if this,
but check this out, Barry.
Yeah.
What comes to visit women every single month? So if you can't afford food, do you think you can afford sanitary napkins or tampons?
Yes.
I mean, think about. I'm you know, we're getting kind of raw here, but we just want you to, again, this is all about breaking the bias. It's even, we have to even admit sometimes there's something in our thinking that may cause us to cross the street or misjudge someone, right? Or think, oh, she's there because I know she's probably on drugs. No, not necessarily. My cousin wasn't on drugs. She wasn't. Never been on drugs.
I'm probably one of the few Marines in the Marine Corps has never been drunk in his life. And I cannot tell you how many people looked at me and was like, did you have a drug problem? Like, I don't even take aspirin, really. I mean, no, I mean, just, in fact, my research when I was in college was drug abuse and things like this. And my mom was an alcoholic. So if you take me to the bar, I have 1 drink, 2 drinks, I'm good. So there had to be something. There were days when I had to defend why I was homeless. Like, come on, you tell the truth. You were drunk. You were an alcoholic. You were a drug addict. I'm like, no, I wasn't. Well, how did you be? Life. I lost my job. I got sick. Something else. And then one day, as I said the last time, it just seemed like the sun just didn't rise anymore. The sun just didn't come up anymore. And that's the thing. It's like 1 minute you can see it happening. You can see the dark clouds, but when it's finally here, you're looking around, you're like, this is a family show. So you can fill in the blanks. Right. Oh, beep-a-doo beep. This is it. And I waited. For death. There were so many days I just waited for death. I just said, the only reason why I didn't commit suicide, and then this is full disclosure, because there's a part of me that's just too arrogant to think that I kept thinking somebody would miss me. I'm like, if I do it, so that's when I'll find out. Really, literally, when you go to the VA, I'm still, I'm a vet. I go to VA and they always ask you, you okay? You having suicide call? And I told this nurse literally 2 weeks ago, I said, the reason why I've never, she asked me, was I depressed because of the war and everything else? I said, yes, but I said, I'm not suicidal. And I said, let me tell you why. I said, I'm too arrogant. I think as soon as I'm about ready to do something, I'm like, you know what? Somebody's going to miss me, so maybe not. Maybe that's the only reason that I thought all of a sudden, as the blood was oozing out, somebody go like, hey, Barry. And I'm like, it's too late now. So that's the only reason. But there was and I can laugh about it now. And, we can humor and everything else. But for such a long time, in fact, I'm sitting. I did a speech, the World Championship of Public Speaking. That was my speech in the winter of 1992 when I was homeless. And I was sitting right here on a Tuesday night, 3:00 in the morning, bawling because there's a part of my speech that says, I used to envy the people that can sing and dance because I can't sing and I can't dance, but nobody wants to hear biochemistry from a bum. And I was bawling because I had to go back to that day, to that darkness. And just the only thing I can make the analogy of, think about the worst moment in your life and then having to go back there and literally write out that experience. It's horrific, and it stays with you forever. I'm never going to not think of being homeless. Never. I don't care. Hope Diamond and stuff like this. Yeah. But yeah. And so what?
And what we were saying, what we're witnessing with the Ukrainians, it's we're watching it. We're watching people who were doing well 2 weeks ago. Children going to school, mom and dad working, happy families are homeless. So this is just an example. Life can happen and does happen in an instant. Sometimes it's progressive, but sometimes things outside of our control. 2007, 2008 mortgage crisis, right? There's another example.
Yep.
And for me, Barry, if my parents hadn't stepped in, I would have been homeless. I'm like, Mom, because I lost everything. And my dad was saying, LaWanna, let your house go. And I remember crying. I said, Dad, this is all I have left. And he said, we'll help you keep it.
Yeah.
But even in that case, I would have been able to go home to Mom and Dad. But it was, I don't take, like you, I don't take things for granted, because I saw I was doing everything right. I was dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's. Life happened beyond my control, as many who went through that period. And, you know, some survived, some didn't. Some found the strength, and others said, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an important, and that's a very important point, because especially when you've done all the things, you know, I use stories, and that's why I say the way to get out of it is to begin using stories, because stories are very, very, really extremely powerful, because what you just said, you dotted all the I's, you crossed all the T's, you went to school, you did the things, you were respectful to your parents, and all these things, and yet this is where you are. So you don't even have, I used to envy the people that had alcohol. At least you're an alcoholic. You got a reason for being here. You're a drug addict. You have antiquities. And this was the conversation we had. I said, well, at least you're, she said, in fact, she got mad at me. She was like, I said, well, at least you're a drug addict. She says, I won't tell you what she said, but she got very upset. She said, oh, so that makes it better? And I just thought, yeah, I'm sorry. That was a stupid way of thinking. But to me, I was being selfish. I was just like, well, at least you can blame that. I did this. I got ribbons and medals and war hero and 3 degrees. I had 3 degrees. Imagine having degrees in 4 years. I had a degree in biology, chemistry, and biochemistry. I had written papers for the NIH, and I'm sleeping in a dumpster right on Jackson Street in Chicago. And those of you who are from Chicago know exactly. Right next to DePaul University, that alley, that was my home for a year. So I'm sleeping next to a university that I would have gone to and done well. I saw people with all these books and doing all these dreams, and here I am with a dumpster. What do I say? Oh, yeah, go to school and you'll wind up here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Barry.
So unsung, unheard. The first thing that you can do, one of the greatest things you can do, is listen to their stories. Don't let them no longer be unsung. Hear their story. Hear their stories, see them, listen to, before you make that judgment. Oh, they're homeless. That's it. You count them out. Find out how they got there. And I guarantee you, the one thing I will guarantee you that every homeless person knows, they know the exact date when homelessness happened. For me, it was when I really realized I was homeless. It was December 15th, 1992. I remember that day. I still celebrate that day as the day that I realized when I was homeless. That was homeless day for me. And every homeless person knows that date, when it happened, when the lights came out, it went off. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, Barry, thank you for joining me for this. And I know people are like, well, I thought we're supposed to be celebrating women's history. We are, because they are a part of history. They're part of our living history. And again, we are seeing it unfold before our eyes. Please check yourself, watch your judgment, your own biases that are there, and realize that we all go through. You live long enough, life happens, your ebbs and flows, and sometimes the hurricanes and tsunamis happen and knock you flat. But as Maya Angelou says, still I rise. So like that Hope Diamond is behind Barry, we just encourage each and every one of you, no matter what your journey is, how dark it may seem, just believe that you have within you divine genius and power to rise above. But it first starts with here, believing, as Barry's book,
As a man
not that he
thinketh,
wrote it, but as a man thinketh, as a woman thinketh.
This is the book right here. You see this right here. It stays with me all the time. So, and
it starts with a mindset, and you got to believe, and you got to love you. Yeah. You got to love you. So
last quick point. This Hope Diamond. Everyone that owned the Hope Diamond died a horrible death. And actually, people think it's cursed. So even though here's this beautiful, breathtaking, once very rare blue diamond, everyone who owned this diamond either went crazy, died a horrible death, things like this. So now it sits in the Smithsonian institution where it's safe and nobody's messed that mess. So even if you have, this is how a lot of people think. They think, oh no, that could never happen to me. Yeah, you think you're the Hope Diamond. But what happened to the Hope Diamond? What happened to the people who own that? That's a lot like homelessness. One minute your cousin had a home and was making, imagine, $250,000 in the 80s and a woman. So when your parents said that she was homeless, you were like, what? That would be like someone said, you know, Barry's really Chinese. What are you talking about? And then you realize. So it is celebrate you. If you haven't gone through hard times, you know you will. Eventually, may not be homelessness, and just enjoy the time. Celebrate where you're at right now and give back to ones who aren't here or who need help. So the celebration goes both ways. You remember you're celebrating you now because this is where you are now, and this is what you will be strengthened by when hard times come. And the universe, God will remember how you acted, the times when you had and what you gave back. And that's why I really appreciate you, LaWanna, for doing what you're doing. Even though you're beautiful, you have a beautiful home and all these things, you're giving back. And that's my mission, my promise I made to God, to if I ever get out of homelessness, I want to spend my life helping people discover the value of their stories. So thank you for this opportunity to be here to speak to your audience all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can follow Barry on E360 TV for the Gem Hunter stories, and you can reach out to him at thegemhunter@mac.com, thegemhunter@mac.com. Barry, it's been a pleasure. Look forward to working with you some more. And ladies, remember, when your vision intersects with opportunity and aligns with your belief, success is inevitable. And let's all get together and break the bias. Until next time.
Break the bias. I like that. Break the bias. Yes. Thank you.
Bye-bye.